Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at two different things. First, we're going to take a look at how we can swap out view engines within the ASP.NET MVC Framework. And the second, we'll take an intro look at the Spark view engine. We'll actually be setting our Spark view engine as our default view engine. I actually like the Spark view engine. I think it's pretty easy to use, pretty comfortable, very low learning curve. And part of that reason is the fact that they believe that HTML should dominate the markup, and you should just be able to inject your logic or your for loops and your if statements within that HTML tag in order to get rid of some of the angle bracket noise that you get in the web forms view engine. The Spark view engine is usable for both the ASP.NET MVC framework as well as the Castle Monorail framework, so it's available for both if you're doing either or. So if you have more information or you want more information on the Spark view engine, check out their website at sparkviewengine.com. Now, obviously you're going to need to download the Spark view engine binaries. I've already done that. I'm not going to waste your time here. So what you need to do after you download it is actually add a reference to two of the files, spark.dll and spark.web.mvc. Now once you've added those, we actually need to instruct the MVC framework how to use the view engine. In order to do that, it's 2 lines of code. I'm going to first clear out any existing view engines that might have already been registered. And then I'm going to add a reference to the Spark one. And I'm going to do viewengines.add Spark view factory, which is part of the spark.web.mvc namespace. Well, there you go. That actually is all you need to do in order to tell the MVC framework which view engine to use. Now we actually need to do a bunch of stuff to configure it and use it. After we set it up, we actually need to go over to our web config file and make a few changes. I'm going to show you the bare minimal here in order to get the view engine working. There are many types of configurations and ways you can configure the view engine. If you're interested in that, check out the website for more information. To prevent fat fingering, I'm actually going to copy and paste here. We need to create a section. I'm going to call it Spark. You can call it whatever you want, but to me Spark makes the most sense. And basically you're saying create a handle, you're pointing a handler to it. And then after I've created that, I actually need to just create the section and just tell it the debug equals true. That's it. Now my web config is all set up. Now the rest of my job is just set up to use the Spark view engine and use the various syntax available to it. We're going to take a look at two different things today. We're going to look at how to create a master page and how to create a standard simple view with a very simple logic in it. Spark uses the .spark extension. That's what tells the view engine what files it can render. And if you look at the view engine the master page on the screen right now, which is called application.spark, and it's inside of my shared folder, you'll see it looks very similar to a standard HTML markup page. What makes this a master page is the fact that it's inside of my shared file and that it's called application.spark. By default, the Spark view engine tries to associate the application.spark master page to every view unless it's explicitly stated differently, which is pretty slick because now I don't have to worry about telling each individual view which master page to use. It just knows that by default, use application.spark. One thing I want to point out inside of this file that's a little different is this right here. This is how to create your content placeholder tag. This will allow the master page to be implemented by various views, and I can just implement this piece of code here in my various views. It'll inject it right here. This is the equivalent to this here. So now that we've got our master page set up, let's take a look at how we create a standard view with Spark. Again, I've created a view called list.spark, and of course you need to namespace it .spark. And this is where I'm telling it what content placeholder to use. Now in my particular case here, I have a strongly typed view data, and because the Spark view engine doesn't have the concept of the code behind, I need to instruct my view what type my view data is. And to do that, you do this line of code right here. I say view data, and I'm going to give it the fully qualified namespace of the type that my view data is. Once I've done that, I'm able to use the view data the same way I do it within standard web forms. Now, a couple things I want to point out to you here is I have a standard HTML table. I just want to build a simple table that displays some data. I'm going to create the header for it, and then I want to create here, and this is my body row. Now, what makes the Spark View Engine stand out versus, say, the Web Forms View Engine is I don't need to actually build an external tag that does my for looping. They've actually embedded that into my HTML tags. And the one way I can do it here is I want to create a loop, and every time it creates a loop, it's going to create this entire TR block. And I can do, do it this way. So I'm going to say each time I'm going to create a variable called user and pull it out of the users list that's part of my view data. Now, in order to pull out individual values out of out of the entity during each iteration, a little bit different than what you're used to within the Web Forms View Engine. Instead of doing something like this, I use the syntax down here. The only difference being is I use the $, then the curly bracket, and then the variable name, and then curly bracket. If you're familiar with things like Nant, or scripting language like that, this should be very familiar with you. If you're not, it's really not that different. It pulls out just the same. You can also notice that I can still use the HTML helpers and everything, all the other C# code and helper files that you use standard. Well, now we've seen how to lay out a view. Let's see what it looks like when we run the thing. Ideally, it should look exactly the same and run exactly the same. And there you go. I have a view that now implements the Spark View Engine and outputs standard HTML like you would expect. And I did it all in about 6 minutes time. So if you're looking to swap out view engines and you don't want to use the default Web Forms View Engine, take a look at the Spark View Engine. I find it pretty easy to use. This was just an introductory level, right? I understand that, and there's a lot more you can do. And the nice thing is they've got a lot of very nice documentation on their site. So hope you learned something. Till next time.